what happened to me now?
I love your titles. They're beautiful.
Thank you. Okay, and I want to apologize to everybody. It's definitely not Wednesday, and it's not Tuesday. It is Monday, and we know that. But yeah, and I want to introduce you to Dr. Laurie Weiss. And Laurie, I just want to say to you, I think just there was so much grace and the world smiling on me when we happened to come across each other, because you are an expert in my absolute favorite topic, the work that I know that I'm on this world to do, to help raise awareness for, and you are a pioneer in that work. So I can't wait to get started on our topic. And so we're going to talk a lot about inner child work today, but also about generational trauma.
I am very excited about this because I don't talk about it very often anymore. I'm doing some other things, and revisiting this, I think it's such an important topic.
Yeah, and too much knowledge has gone lost, so which has been there before, so it's great. So you and your husband were pioneers with writing your first book, am I right?
Yes. It was basically the definitive book about using developmental information to do inner child work. And it was done, we were doing it for about 17 years before the inner child phase became very popular. So we had a very solid grounding based on transactional analysis and the work of Pam Levin, who's a real pioneer, and Jackie Lee Schiff and people like that.
Okay, so yeah, and I love transactional analysis too, because once you figure that out, there's a whole new world that opens for you in communication.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and patterns. It shows our patterns to us very clearly. So you've also done a lot of work on codependency.
Yes, because the two go together.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So I want you to talk. I'm going to not talk a lot tonight. So I just want to ask you questions and I want you to talk. So let's talk about the big subject, generational trauma. How we, without even knowing it, without realizing it, just go through our lives, and how parents have these wounds and they don't even know it, but it just gets passed on from generation to generation.
It's basically that parents can't give what they don't have. And if they haven't had learned the effective ways of being in the world, they can't pass it on to their children. It's simply not possible. Somebody wrote a book called We're Doing the Best We Can. And we are. But so much information has developed over generations that doesn't get put into the general population. People just don't know about what's possible. For example, there are books about how violence is the appropriate way to parent children. Mm-hmm. And people still believe that because their grandparents did it and their parents did it. And it absolutely isn't. We have so much more information now about what is appropriate and what works and what helps children develop. And of course, we're trying to develop children to do different things now. We're not trying to develop machines. For a long time,
so we're talking to regular people. We're talking to people who are following the principles that parents taught them, who are doing the best they can, who are, if you catch yourself, you can hear your mother speaking, or your father speaking, you repeat these things and you believe in it. You firmly believe it. This is the way it should be because I learned those things so small. I learned them before 7, so they are very deeply ingrained in my belief system. So what are the kinds of harm that parents can revisit onto their children without even knowing?
I think the biggest is the experience of you're not enough.
Mhm.
So many people are told, you should do better. You're not competing well enough. You're not measuring up to my standards. You're not doing this. And they come around with a lifelong experience of, I have to prove myself in the world for the rest of my life.
Yeah. And then sometimes it's the behavior that teach them that. If you have a parent who don't make time for you, or you have a parent whose needs are so big that there's no space for your needs, or somebody else, or somebody else is more important than you. Sometimes it's not the words that you hear, sometimes it's somebody's behavior.
I've had people who, as very small children, needed to take care of their sick parents, 3, 4, 5-year-olds. And they learned that, my needs don't count, which is another very, very important thing that people learn. They learn that my needs don't count. They learn that parents come first. They learn that I'm not enough.
Yeah. And then there's the people who don't believe that they are lovable, or who actually know that they were not wanted.
Oh, yes. And the thing is that we swear that we are not going to do to our children what our parents did to us. Absolutely convinced. And then under moments of stress, which we all experience, no matter what, we do exactly the same things that our parents did, even though we intend not to. And that's because we're human.
Yes.
And don't have other options at that moment.
Yeah, and because so much of the learning that we do is in our subconscious. I mean, if you take people who have no recollection of their childhood, and yet they are perpetuating the same communication styles, the same patterns, but they have no recollection of their childhood, they still do it.
Children are like sponges. They absorb everything and record it, even if they may not have access to it as adults.
Yes, I think that is what a lot of adults don't understand. I also work with adults who sit and recount their earliest memories, and if we think about it, when there's something happening in a child's life, a death or a war, then adults have a way of making it's fine, the child barely knows about this, they won't even remember this, they will get over it. Yet there are just so many tiny moments that shape our destiny. It's sometimes just a careless word, sometimes it's just a label that you take on and you make it your identity.
My parents told one of my siblings, we're going to send you back to the Indians.
Okay.
I mean, they were teasing, they were playing. She was wild. But it stuck. There's that lack of security. We're going to send you back somewhere.
Yeah, lose your sense of safety. And then you go into the I have to try harder, or people will never be there for me. You go in one of those loops and you don't even know you're in those loops.
People spend a great deal of time trying to make up for what they missed when they were children. It's really, living is very simple. We have needs. We can do something about getting those needs met. And when those needs are satisfied, they diminish and they may recur. Like we think about the need for food. We get hungry, we find something to eat, we eat it, we're satisfied, we're through. And then later on, we get hungry again. Many human needs are like that way. But people make it so complicated because they're trying to make up for or follow the old rules that were inadvertently transmitted.
Yes. And then, but our problem is the needs that are not obvious. So our needs are our needs for acceptance, for belonging, for being affirmed. Those needs, we don't have words as children to say them, and we don't have a way. And then, if we don't have those affirmed as adults, we don't have a way to say it. We just know there's a hole somewhere, there's a longing, there's a yearning, and we need to fill it with something, whether it's chocolates or drinking or being addicted to another person.
I once wrote an article about standing in front of the refrigerator door when I wasn't hungry and knowing what I needed was not in the refrigerator, but not knowing what it was that I needed and needing to take time out and figure it out. And that taking time out to figure it out and having faith that we know what we need or can learn to know what we need is, I think, the most important thing.
Yeah, similar refrigerator story. You know, my mother moved in with me, and we did very well if we didn't live in the same house. And all of a sudden, she's living in my house. And I could not walk down the passage to her room unless I stopped in the kitchen. And I would take a slice of white bread and put butter on it and put apricot jam on it and eat it. And another one, and butter and apricot jam and eat it. I would eat a half loaf of bread every night before I was able to face my mother. And I didn't realize it was because my relationship with my mother had such a huge gap. I, I had to literally fill myself up, gain 20 kilos
Wow.
while she was living with me, because I actually just could not face walking down the passage and getting the emotional manipulation and the victimhood that she used to put on us from small. That's what I couldn't face. I didn't have a name for it. And my mother was the nicest person.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody loved her. It's just with me, especially, she had her own game, her own pattern that she followed without knowing it. She had really good intentions. She thought she was a good mother for me. And she was a very
Right.
bad kid.
And probably
But
everybody looking thought that she was a good mother for you, but you knew.
yeah, yeah. And that thing that you go and you actually have to go and find it in the fridge because it's not inside you, or you have to go and find it at the in the bottom of a bottle, or in the chocolate, or in that person that you're addicted to, because you have no name for it. And it's and if you don't have a name for it, what are you going to do for your own children? How are you going to change your patterns so that you don't recreate that same victimhood or that same emotional absence?
I think you're absolutely right. It is critical.
So, where would you say we start? Are we starting with the parents, or are we starting with people in whose life something is just not right and they don't even quite know what the name is?
I think that when people start getting uncomfortable, when, for a while, the things that we learn when we're teenagers to make life work seem to work. And then after a while they break down. Something happens and it's like, I didn't think it was going to be this way. It's just like, I don't know what to do. There is a conspiracy of silence. I'm not supposed to talk about that. And when we start breaking that conspiracy of silence, finding even one person to confide in and say, this really isn't working. I'm really very uncomfortable. Then the chain starts to open up because help is available. There's so many ways to get it. And there's self-help books. I mean, that's why I write them, because for a lot of people, it's easier to read a book and say, oh, I'm not the only one, which provides enormous relief.
Yes.
And then here's some things that I can do about it. make a difference. And sometimes it's groups, sometimes it's talking around the table after you've worked out, talking with the other people who were there, or being in a class or on a coffee break at work, whatever it is. And starting to talk, and then the resources start to become apparent. And there are many resources.
Okay, so if you talk about adult child syndrome, where we grew up way too young and we learned all these survival mechanisms, and we are just a bundle of survival mechanisms, which we can make look really good, because we can become very driven, we can become very successful and independent, and so we can bring an enormous contribution to the world, which doesn't mean that inside we are fine, but we can look so okay. Now, your reference to this is who I was when I was a teenager, and then, when things start happening. I often wonder if anybody would have been able to get through to me for years and years, because I was so intent on looking okay. It was my job to fix everything. There was no thought in my head that my circumstances was really as bad as they were. Married to an alcoholic with undiagnosed ADD. I mean, you can just think it was ridiculous. And I'm 20 years old and I'm married and I have no clue what to do. It's a story of many, 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 many people.
Yes.
But we jump in and we rescue, and we feel great about rescuing, and then we look okay. We don't ask for help. We don't tell other people how hard it is. We don't even know that it's hard. We just know it's my job. I have to fix it.
And right. We don't know that there's any way to relax and feel good.
No, because you didn't have that example. You were not, as a child, affirmed, or you didn't have an opportunity to go to your mother. I had to be my mother's
mother.
Yeah, she came to me for emotional support when I was tiny, and so where's my support? If you don't know that you can get support, you're not going to ask for it. If you're scared of being judged, you're not going to ask for it. If you judge yourself as weak, you're not going to ask for it. So that tough ulterior, and then inside you are a mush of emotions. You marshmallow, but everybody just see this tough, I'm okay facade that you work to give a world. It's really, really hard to reach most of the people that need help the most because of this.
The over-responsible ones.
It's true. So, for me, it comes out that if you start helping people with relationships and the codependency, you can work back, and then you can get to the real causes. But for somebody to say, hi, I need somebody who can help me with adult child work, with inner child work, with my unresolved childhood trauma, that doesn't happen. It really comes out in the relationships. And so I think that's also why we want to talk about codependency, which is one of your areas that you wrote.
Well, the interesting thing is that the book that was so popular is called Recovery from Codependency. It's never too late to reclaim your childhood, because it talks about the impact of childhood works on codependency.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. So you wrote a book about codependency.
Well, we called it Healing the Inner Child originally, yes. But it was about codependency, because codependency is not just about the person who is the problem. It's the person who's the helper as well. Both people are equally damaged. It just shows up in different ways.
Yes, I know that from my own experience of being codependent, that I looked like the perfect wife, married to the alcoholic, with ADD, the rescuer, always being organized, always being proactive, always being responsible, always being hardworking. So I looked like the the person who was right on
And
paper.
even I was a codependent as well. And I came from a healthy background where I was loved, where I was nurtured, where I achieved. And of course, I wasn't very much allowed to have my feelings or be myself. But that was one of the things. I was over responsible and married and doing everything for my husband because that was what I had been taught. I was taught that a woman's place is to support a man. This was before the second wave women's liberation movement in the United States that I was very much a part of. But I was taught those things explicitly by my mother. And so I was doing them, and my enthusiasm began to get less and less and less and less. And so I was fortunate. And then my husband was a psychology student, and he took me for therapy. And I discovered that I had given up myself in order to be in the relationship, which is what most codependents do. And the other side of it was people think they have to give up the relationship in order to be themselves, which is one way to get to be yourself. And in some toxic relationships, it's the only way. But in many relationships where both people are innocently blundering around, which is what we were doing what we thought we were supposed to be doing as young marrieds, it's quite possible to grow together and learn. And the real issue is learning how to be who you are or who we are for ourselves rather than who the world is expecting us to be.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. People come to me for relationship counseling, and I do the counseling separate. You work on you, you work on you, you both learn how to be emotionally present adults. We do a few sessions together so you can communicate better and I can see your patterns. But most of the work to make that relationship great is where you actually bring what you are learning yourself into the relationship to make it better by learning how to talk, how to have wants and needs, how to have boundaries, how to not fix the other person, but to focus on yourself. All the things that's going to make it a not codependent relationship where you work on being strong yourself, but being very committed and willing to negotiate the relationship, which we can do. Which we can do when we are whole adults.
One of the things about codependent relationships is usually both partners are in perfect agreement that if only the other person would change, things would be better.
Yeah, I spent a very long time of my life, 12 years, unbelievably long, knowing that I would be perfectly happy the minute my husband changed. And nothing changed. I went into helpless and hopeless, and there was a little puddle left of me. But before the time when I became ready to not be so hard-headed and let other people help me. Because remember, before that, I was that teenager who was self-sufficient and thought everything was mine to do. And so from pure suffering, my head became soft enough so that somebody else could say to me, here's the help. There, look at yourself. Put yourself first for a change. Work on you. Forget about him. I mean, those are magical words. And five psychologists later, nobody has said that to me.
I heard a couple talking about that yesterday. It's never too late. He's 84. She's in her late 60s.
Okay. So if we are talking to people, 70 to 80% of the world, who have no clue that it can be easier and there is something different, there's more, there's a place where we are more us, where it's just easier. What would you say is the biggest giveaway to people that they actually need help when they don't even know they need help?
When they're miserable. when they just feel like, another day, how am I going to get through this?
What about the people who are constantly seeking, always looking for something else? Like there's a piece missing, but they don't have a name for it. Another book, another guru, another course.
You know, those people usually don't get help until something happens and it doesn't work. And then they say, why isn't it working? What's wrong? And then sometimes they will get help. But it's very difficult. One of my teachers said that somebody who is acclimated to a larger system is much, much, much more difficult to help than somebody who's in pain. So I think the pain has really, realistically, people have to be in a place that they experience their pain.
Yes, so if we are doing, we're running on automated systems, automated outlooks, and we are doing every single day what we think is expected of us. We are fitting into the world, and we are repeating our patterns. Then there's a very big chance that we are going to be repeating patterns that we've inherited. And maybe a good way to do it is to ask yourself a question. If I look at my examples, were they healthy examples? And if they were not, maybe I need to sit up and take notice and find real help, because it's impossible for us to get rid of what we've learned before 7 without doing some really deep work. And most of it is going to be hidden from us, don't you think?
Yes, it is. You know, another way that people recognize that they need help is when they say, I've been trying to change this about myself and I can't. I've been trying to stop smoking and I just always go back to it. Or I can't seem to lose that weight because I eat that ice cream, all at once or whatever. That's a signal.
Yeah, that half loaf of white bread with butter and apricot.
Yeah, yes. That's a signal that says, something is wrong here. I've gained 20 kilos. That means something is wrong.
Yeah. So what about if people walk around with a lot of very rigid beliefs? Because I think for me, those are the people who are in the deepest need, who are going to be the last ones who's going to come knocking and say, I need help. Because when your belief system is very, very rigid, you absolutely believe you are right.
The only time I saw people like that when I was actively in practice was when their wives were leaving them.
True.
And then it was like, I was a wonderful husband. I thought I did everything right. And, this came out of the total blue, where truly she had been trying to tell him about the problem for a number of years.
Yeah. Very true.
But I think those are not the people who are watching your show. They may be married to the people who are watching your show, or their boss may be people who are watching your show. But those aren't the ones who are here now.
I think the people who are watching are people who were like me, who sort of somehow knew, very small, that there's a little bit of potential that we are just not reaching. There's like a hidden mystery key that somebody just didn't give to us, and where we just never feel completely at home in the world, like a round peg in a square hole, or other way around. You sort of know something is off, but you don't have any clue. And you are searching, and you are desperately searching, because the longer your life carries on, the harder it becomes if you don't get real help. But you don't know how to open your mouth and ask for what you need because you don't have a name for it. You cannot go and ask people for the name of something if you don't know what it is that you're missing. Because if you're not giving that as a tool, so you're blundering around looking for the real help, and the real help is to go and assess your inner world, find your own patterns, find your thinking patterns, see which ones are true to you, see which one still serves you. I think those are the people are watching, the people like I used to be.
Right. Do you have resources for them?
I have resources for them, and you've got resources for me.
I have resources. Mine are fewer now because I don't pay attention to it, but I've created wonderful resources for them.
Yes, in my newsletter, in the email that I send out, I've sent the same email out 3 times now since last Wednesday. I have put in a link to your Amazon page, and so your books are available there. And we and you are going to talk more because we want to make sure that your workbook becomes available again.
I would love to have that happen.
Yeah. So we're going to work. Yeah.
Yeah, because one of the things that happened was in the U.S., we were able to do very deep work in touching people for a lot of years. And then the climate changed. And it was becoming more and more difficult to do that work. And I was talking with Stan Groff one day, who's holotropic breath work and transformation, things like that. And I had been in one of his workshops and done some extremely powerful work. And he said, it can't be, we're not going to be able to do this much longer. And I said, well, it's got to be done. How? And he said, it'll be done in self-help groups. And my response was immediately, that can't happen. And then, of course, being the person I am, I immediately start thinking about, well, if it could happen, what would have to be there for it to happen? Because after all, Alcoholics Anonymous, the granddaddy of them all is self-help, is groups of people who know they need to connect. And Al-Anon is self-help. So I started looking at that. What would it take for people to do this kind of work in self-help groups? And based on my experience and other people's work, I created something that turned out to be my doctoral work. And it helped about 10,000 people when it was popular.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. So that's why I chose not to study psychology, because there was nothing that would relate, not a single course anywhere, that would relate to the work which I knew I was doing already, because I was working with adult child support groups. And I was so desperate to find any materials, any question, that I used a Narcotics Anonymous workbook, which was suggested to me by the person who was my sponsor at the time. And because it works the same, works the same way as AA, where you have a sponsor and you sponsor other people, and you show up and you're there for yourself, which is amazing. And for somebody like me who've never done groups before, which is a lot of us, it was so scary, but it's so healing, because in there you have a new tribe, you have new family, you learn how to be in the world in a different way, you learn to trust people, you learn to let people in. All those things which we resolutely keep from us when we are on our survival drive. So, and the magic's in the questions. And so my book has got a 70-page workbook with only questions that comes with it for free. And I say in the foreword, I say to people, form your own little book club. Find yourself 3 or 4 other people, gather once a week and start your own little book club, because it's not only the book, it's not only the knowledge, it's not only the questions, it's the community. When you put those ones together, you heal miraculously.
And I love that. That is so important. Form community. because just even one other person, one best friend, can make such a huge difference.
Yeah, I couldn't find a group. So I found somebody who was an adult child pioneer, and she was retired and not doing groups anymore. And she said to me, Lovey, you start your own group. One other person is a group. She said to me, that's what I did. There was no group. So I started a group. And I basically started a group with one other person. She became my sponsor. I became her sponsor, and it was magical and amazing. And the world opens in front of you, and it is just, life becomes so much clearer once you actually understand all these things that we cannot have because for generations it wasn't brought over. It was just not available to us. Can I ask you one last question?
Sure.
Which I think is a very valid one. If you have a parent who's stuck in victimhood, what do you do as a child? I know such a lot of people who have that problem.
I can think about what I did with one person, a 13-year-old girl. And what I did, her mother was an alcoholic, very needy. And she was a pretty level-headed kid. And what I told her was to look for opportunities to connect with other people and hang in there, and that she would be able to get out of the situation in a few years, and that there was an end in sight. I don't know how it came out. Her mother didn't stop being an alcoholic.
Yeah, I think it's one of the hardest things to get through to somebody who's really entrenched in being a victim. Once you figure it out, once it becomes clear to you and you still want to have that relationship with that parent, and they are stuck in victimhood, there's the blame, there's the emotional manipulation, and you've dropped the barriers. You are ready to have a relationship because you understand and you've grown yourself and you've forgiven. And then you still sit with somebody who is so stuck in wanting to be a victim and actually not knowing anything else. And it's really hard to have that conversation with somebody that you love and care about and say, you're a victim, because most of the time they don't want to know it.
No, they don't want to know it. And when it comes to a grown-up person who can, has resources, doesn't have to be in the situation, isn't stuck, then there are many other options, like being very superficial, like knowing that your needs aren't going to be met at that source. It's like shopping at a gas station for food. Now, of course, there are convenience foods there, but so that may not be the best thing there. But shopping at a grocery store for, I don't know, I'm not thinking of good examples, but you go to another place to get something.
Yeah, don't go look for stuff at a petrol station that if you're looking for something else, don't go looking for it where somebody's not able to give it to you.
Yeah.
I've said to people, as part of reparenting yourself, you can find yourself another set of parents, another family, the family of your choosing, so that you can get the love and acceptance and unconditional validation and love that you so deserve, just by choosing yourself another family.
You can do that. And some children have. In fact, I've met many people who have. In the early adult children of alcoholics literature in the States, they called it the cookie lady.
Okay.
The person who believed in you.
Ah,
It could be the
that's
one
amazing.
person, it could be the next door neighbor who gave you cookies and milk after school.
Your saving person.
The saving person, it can be
Mm.
just one person. I have asked people, I met one young woman who came from a horrible background, but was doing very well. And I said, how did you learn so much so fast? And she said, I was a representative of a cosmetic company, and somebody took me under her wing and showed me what to do. Made a huge difference for her.
Yeah. Saving people. I mean, we can all be saving people for others. That's
Absolutely.
an amazing thing. And we can always all be saving people for one lost child, for one lost young person, just by believing in them.
Just by saying you're doing a great job,
Mm.
or I can see how hard you're working. Just any little thing can make a huge difference for some people. And I don't know about you, but I've had people come back to me years later and say, when you said this, and it wasn't part of any session or anything else, it was just something in passing as they were leaving the house or leaving the therapy session. So that was what made the difference. So just always being aware and being kind when you can.
Yeah, I've had it happen with me completely unintentionally when somebody's been, my alternative life of doing pottery and stained glass, and somebody coming into my studio and I'm remarking about something that she's done, which is awesome and beautiful, and coming back to me a year later and say, Louise, you so inspired me in that moment. I went home and I did this, and here's what I've made, simply because you inspired me.
Mm-hmm.
And without even wanting to do that, we can all do that. We can all choose to inspire somebody, or we can choose to be neutral or negative. But we will never know the difference we make. I've had saving people too. I had one teacher who believed in me when I didn't know where to get my next drop of sustenance from. I was at a place where I really felt like I was so alone in the world. One teacher noticed me, and that was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started working, I had one boss who called me in, and he said to me, "You have to learn to reach out to people." I mean, I wanted to die. It was the worst thing. I walked out there and I howled in my dark little corner, and then I picked myself up and I started reaching out to people because one person said that to me.
Yeah.
So we can all start from a point. But I think, first of all, to get the realization that we are not one of us are free from generational leftovers of trauma and behavior circles and outlooks and limiting beliefs and lack of affirmation. We're all walking around with that until we
Mm-hmm.
address it.
Yeah.
I read the road less traveled. And I skipped the part about codependency. I was like, that's not me. Amazing book, but I'm skipping that. That's not me. When I went back to the road less traveled the second time, I was like, what? That's in there? I completely didn't even know how codependent I was and how completely addicted I was to my husband, that I couldn't see myself functioning. I'm intelligent and I'm together and I'm accomplished, and I couldn't walk into a room unless I was holding onto his arm because I just didn't feel that I was complete enough to present myself to the world. So we walk around and we make these patterns in our own lives because we are just not aware.
And because we're not ready yet.
I want to quickly go see. Okay, who's there? Okay, I would like a few more hearts there, people. I like hearts. Okay. Hi, Antoinette. No noise. Give me some hand clapping there. Okay. Hi, Mitchell. Nice to see you. I hope that you are getting a lot of value from this. Hi, Linda. It is a pleasure. Okay, so let's see. Do we have any questions here? Come on, guys. We've got the expert here. I want to ask you one last thing, which is a bit of a deep psychology question. Do you believe that Jung is right, that we want to fix our relationships by repeating our relationships with our parents, by repeating those same cycles and patterns in our own relationships?
Well, I believe that we choose our partners because they're different than our parents, but underneath they're very similar to our parents. We miss that part. And we hope that they're enough different that they'll be able to give us what we missed. Absolutely believe that.
Yeah.
Harville Hendricks wrote wonderful books about that. And that then we discover that, lo and behold, they are not that different and they can't give us what we're looking for. And often what we're looking for is what our parents didn't approve of in us.
Very true. I often end up saying, so you married your mother.
No, that's a shorthand.
Yeah, because when you look at the patterns, and that's why, I'm really intrigued by that statement that we whether subconsciously or not, or otherwise, whether we are doing that or whether it is just that's the relationship that we feel somehow comfortable in, even although it may be very uncomfortable,
It's familiar. Familiar things seem comfortable even when they're not, because we're looking for familiarity.
Yeah. So and so even although there may be something that is not how we want to live our life, somehow when we are small enough, we have formed the idea that this is what a wife should look like. This is what a husband should look like, and then by accident we end up in it, but it's not by accident.
Right. Well, we form the idea because that's all we see. That's we don't have any broad experience. It's just, this is what it is.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see. Awareness is everything. Once we are aware, this is just what we do, isn't it? We make people aware, and once they are aware and they have the tools, they can go back into their lives and they can change. Yeah, no noise. You see, last week we were not meant to be because my inverter, because we had no electricity, was making such a noise that we wouldn't have been able to have a decent conversation. So I'm very glad that tonight we can have a decent conversation.
I'm very glad that we managed it, because the day I had was dripping ceilings.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't explain to everybody. You had dripping ceilings.
Yes.
And then the technology tripped us up. So we will have more conversations, I think. And so if anybody wants to know anything more about the inner child work, how as parents we can do better, what to look out for, those are the kind of things that we both love discussing. So if anybody has more questions, please send them on to me. And is there anything that you want to say in closing to our audience?
I'd like to invite you to visit my website, and that's laurieweiss.com, just my name.com. And you will find there a little program that you can sign up for free called, it's called Reduce Worry Starting Now. And so I'd like to invite you to do that and look. There are books on a number of subjects there. And can I just show this book?
Please.
After 30 some years, is available in print and online. And
okay.
So
that's wonderful.
That's available, and there's information about it on my website.
Okay, and then I will go into a chat and I will go make sure that I post the links. I will put the links to both on there. I've seen your free gift. It looks amazing. And then what are you working on right now?
Right now, I'm working in a field of energy psychology. I have 2 recent books that are making a difference for people. This is called logosynthesis. I don't know whether you're familiar with it at all where you are, because it's
Not at all.
not at all. Well, it is you. This is one of the books, and again, it's on my website. And this is the other one, which is using that process about creating prosperity in your life. And what this is a process I encountered, about 11 years ago, that made the change that we need to do about our early experiences so much easier, so much less painful. I could not believe that it was possible, but it is. And the more I learned about it, the more I became certified in it. It's an international movement at this point, but it's small. Um, the change was amazing because so many people are afraid to approach the pain, the things that hurt so much when we were little. And this allows us to just touch them briefly and heal them, which is an absolutely incredible process. So I love using it, and it fits right in. It's like there are things you didn't learn, there are things you need to experience, and there are things you need to heal.
Okay, so I'm going to get that book, Letting Go, and then the next time we talk about that. How's that?
I'd love to talk about that. That makes
Okay, fantastic. I
such
can't
a
wait to
difference
read
for
it.
people.
I can't wait to read it. Okay, so let me see. What did I miss here? Okay, there's a thank you. It's a big pleasure, Linda. Okay, we'll get there now. Okay, so yes. Okay, we're going to do more of that. Okay. Peter, you can't hear my frogs now. I told them to shut up. But my frogs means that I have a healthy garden. I love when I hear them. Right. Okay. So can you repeat the name of logo?
Logosynthesis, one
Logo
word.
synthesis. Okay, Leslie.
Logosynthesis.
Okay, Leslie, so you're getting that book too, right? Okay, that's it. Great. Okay, everybody, I will go in. I'll put the link to your Amazon right underneath the talk. I'll do it on YouTube and on Facebook. And it is, if you joined here from a newsletter, it's already in the email that I have sent out to you. Laurie, thank you so very much.
You are so very welcome. It's been a delight.
I really appreciate your knowledge and your insight and taking the time to be here. And we'll talk again soon.
Look forward to it.
Okay, one last remark, and then I'm going to play a song. Oh, you thought it was yours. It's the one that says, I'll post it to you, Antoinette. Okay. So we're gonna sell a few books here today. I can see that coming. That's excellent. Okay, so let me go play my song. And you hanging there, Laurie, for a minute while my song plays. And we'll say goodbye in a minute. Okay, so thank you very much to everybody who is here on the live. Everybody else is going to show up later. Remember what I like. Go give me some hearts. Go and share, of people that needs this. And keep on making your remarks. We are going to come back and I'm going to check what is in the chat. And any questions you want, we're going to be talking again. And thank you so very much for everybody showing up now and live, and to you, Laurie. I really appreciate it. Bye-bye. Much love, everyone.
Bye-bye.